Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signore, and breaking news: criminal charges against Alec Baldwin are to be dropped in the fatal Rust incident. It's Kim is here, and no offense, Kim. Even cooler is attorney at law Christopher Melcher again on the phone. How you doing, Christopher?
Doing great. How are you guys
It's
doing?
just better because I like getting legal analysis on this, which neither Kim and I can offer, and I'm fascinated that we've covered this in depth. It seems like a lot of people have just lost interest in this case because I think a lot of people started to see this is where it was going, and people were just frustrated with the case. But let's not bury the lead. Here's what Deadline is exclusive reporting, and now every other major outlet has now followed suit. Less than 2 weeks before a mini trial was scheduled to begin in New Mexico, all charges are going to be dropped against Alec Baldwin for now. Recently appointed Special Prosecutor Carrie Morrissey and Jason Lewis are expected to be filing paperwork soon, perhaps even today, to dismiss the involuntary manslaughter claims against the multi-Emmy winning actor without prejudice, we hear. That means, as they are set to investigate further into what actually went down that terrible day on the Bonanza Creek Ranch set near Santa Fe, this case could be resurrected in the future. Representatives for the Santa Fe's District Attorney's Office had no comment on the situation when contacted. As of now, Baldwin's co-defendant and ex-Rost armorer Hannah Gutierrez-Reed still has charges standing against her, we understand, thereby keeping the probe open and retaining subpoena power for prosecutors going forward. Both of them have pleaded not guilty since an ABC interview. Baldwin repeatedly insisted he did not pull the trigger on the prop that did it, an insistence that the FBI disagreed with in its report of the matter last year. Then the lawyers contested the state of the gun. Further investigation that looks certain to be undertaken as part of any renewed probe. Yada, yada, yada. This all became just a big mess. And now they're just recapping where we are. So, the DA was just bumbling this case from the beginning. And Alec Baldwin himself, his team, has now also dropped a statement. I see here in the Hollywood Reporter, we are pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against Alec Baldwin, and we encourage a proper investigation into the facts and circumstances of this tragic accident, said his attorneys Luke Nickus and Alex Spiro in a statement. Christopher, I guess let's start with, are you surprised?
Well, the wheels were coming off the case, and this is really a feature of it being a small prosecutor's office that didn't have the funding for a case of this kind of magnitude. Although the facts are not that complicated, with all of the media interest in it and high-power lawyers that Alec had, they weren't equipped, and they had to go and get funding from the Board of Supervisors, the county, to hire a special prosecutor because they felt like there was no way that they, within their budget, could put on this case. So then they hired the special prosecutor. Turned out that prosecutor was also like some kind of part-time member of the legislature, which created a problem because you now had a separation of powers problem that Alec's lawyer brought up, and that person eventually had to leave. They had also charged Alec with a let's call it an enhancement for using a firearm in the commission of this offense, which carried a 5-year minimum mandatory prison sentence. However, as Alec's lawyers brought out, that enhancement was not on the books when the incident occurred. So ex post facto, you can't charge somebody or use an enhancement for something that didn't exist at the time of the incident. You would figure the lawyers at the prosecutor's office would know that. So there were these series of very embarrassing moves by the prosecutor that why I say the wheels came off. Now, ultimately, Alec, this was an accident. Certainly had no intention on harming anybody. Nobody did, but they all acted recklessly in my mind. And I do think that the charges are appropriate against Alec. It was just that it wasn't really put on well. So to see them back off, I guess not totally a surprise. They could technically revive it, but I really doubt that that's going to happen. David Halls, the first assistant director, is already taken a plea and for a no jail time deal. And then you have Hannah Gutierrez-Reed that apparently they're going to still pursue because she has no, high power lawyers or ability to pay the kind of lawyers fees that Alec did.
Right. That's what's crazy about this. Money seemed to win at the end of the day, is how this worked. It was frustrating, as we've covered this in great detail with you, and even before we had experts showing us how the firearm would have gone off, and it seems insane for anybody out there to not acknowledge that Baldwin was responsible. Now, did he do it with malice? Did he do it on purpose? I don't think so at all. No, complete accident. But that's why it was involuntary manslaughter, because he should have checked that pistol. That's what actors do. And so many actors came forward calling him out for saying, dude, do it. And I think if he hadn't done all those interviews, Chris, it's like that George Stephanopoulos interview was just his ego and just him refusing any accountability and me. It was so frustrating to watch that. Even me, I don't have a problem with him usually. I never really hated Alec Baldwin. I thought he was a good actor. I just started to dislike the man tremendously based on the way he refused to handle it. And so, and he came after the DA. It was just anyway, it seemed like his day was done. But this DA just really boffed it. And then wasn't there a rumor that they wrecked the pistol too and doing its tests? So couldn't that also become a problem if they do decide to reopen this case?
It is a big problem. So Alec was saying that there was some kind of malfunction with the firearm where, he drew the weapon and it just, some kind of spontaneously fired, which firearms just really don't do. And so the prosecution has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So it has to address that defense and saying, like, look, we've tested it. It doesn't just spontaneously go off. You actually have to press or pull the trigger for it to go off. Now, so they tested that with the FBI's assistance. But what they also did, apparently, is did a bunch of drop testing. So they said, look, we're going to load the gun, we're going to cock it, and then we're just going to drop it and see, could dropping it cause it to fire? No, it can't. Well, Alec's lawyer is properly mentioning then, saying, well, you've now altered this piece of critical evidence by dropping it. And so the condition of the firearm now is not the same as it was during the incident. And that is a really huge problem. And I don't know whose idea it was to drop it, because the pistol was never dropped during the incident. It's not as if, Alec was holding it, it dropped, and then it discharged. That never was part of the scenario. So there was no reason to do this extravagant testing. So yes, that's a whole other problem. Then we have, Hannah Gutierrez Reed's, the young armorer, inexperienced armorer, the first time she served in that role, being on this movie, now having these charges against her. Again, she was responsible for gun safety. She clearly failed on several incidents, not just this one, on prior ones, of being safe. So she does deserve some charges. But I do have a problem with the fact is that she is being thrown under the bus. And the reason why she's a young, inexperienced armorer is because this was a low budget film, and they made a conscious choice to hire somebody who did not have the qualifications to do the job. They compromised safety. And now who is the one who's going to bear criminal responsibility is the one that they hired, and not the people that hired her. And Alec was a co-producer of the film. So I have problems on all those levels with how this is turning out.
Yeah, I'm glad you said I was going to ask that next of what's going to happen to her, because look, people in the comments were saying, Andy, she's responsible. Several people were responsible for this. Let's not, that's clearly what happened here. Multiple people were responsible, but it's just absurd to me that on a set, we're now going to say, well, they told me to. I just had trusted them. No, that's not what the safety laws are on these sets, right? I mean, there are protocols and things you are taught as actors, and Alec's been in this game way too long, and that's what bothers me, this ignorance that he's playing, and then everyone's sort of saying, oh, well, see, he just was doing what he was told. He didn't have to press that trigger. He didn't have to press it, and he should have opened it and checked it before, no matter who. You're telling me if he was aiming that at his own kid, would he have done it? I would dare anybody who's out there saying that, like, oh, well, he's just doing what he's told. That is I'm so frustrated by that excuse, because, yeah, sure, that lady who's responsible for it should also be, right? The AD who grabbed it and didn't check it should also be. But the person who ultimately pulls it, doesn't matter what idiots came before you. You're the one who ultimately could have saved that woman's life, and you didn't, because you trusted dummies. I mean, is that excuse frustrating you?
Well, it is, but I have a background with firearms and very extensive training with those and usage of guns. And so I know that these are deadly and that, people have been killed with what they believe were unloaded firearms. And this is, these tragedies have happened over and over again. So this is not a toy. It's nothing to mess with. This was not a prop. This was a real gun. And so you have to treat it accordingly. And they didn't. So I think folks that when I've talked to the people that have the experience with firearms know that you do not ever pick up a gun without checking it yourself or having somebody check it for you to make sure that it's unloaded before you start pointing at people. This is just common sense. But folks that do not have a background with firearms won't necessarily understand that. But I think it would be similar to saying, hey, Andy, we're going to get in a car together and I'm going to be behind the steering wheel. I'm going to be blindfolded and you tell me when to hit the brakes or turn or accelerate. No one would think that that's safe, even though like I trust you, we're buddies and you got my back and you're going to never steer me wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't trust you that much.
Yeah. No one's going to take that bet, but that's exactly the same thing where it's like, here, it's a gun. It's a real gun. Trust me, it's not loaded. Alec, okay, great. I trust you. And what does he do with it? He points it at somebody. So it was reckless. And what the safety bulletin says for the film industry, and this applies to every film made in the US, low budget or high budget, is that the producer is ultimately responsible for gun safety on the set. They delegate that to the prop master. The prop master can delegate it to the armorer, but it's the producer, the armorer, the prop master, and then also the actor who handles it. Those are the chain of command. The first assistant director is never in that chain, is never to touch the firearm at all. And Alec was a producer and he was also the actor. And as he's admitted, he's handled firearms on sets many, many times. There's no way that he would just trust or should trust somebody saying that it's unloaded without he checking it himself or having somebody else check it for him. It would take matter of seconds to do that, and it would have prevented the loss of Halyna Hutchins and David Sousa, who got shot also. So yeah, lots of responsibility going all around. They are making now, I think they're just started production of Rust Up Again, which so yeah, very, very, very odd story.
Yeah, it's shifting over to Montana instead of where they were in New Mexico. But yeah, apparently it's starting to resume this week. So, I mean, it all just feels like it's just dusted under the carpet. Yeah, we got it all sorted out. The movie's already been in pre-production again. We're going to go back and do it. We're all going to make some money. Great. All right, you're good, Alec. It blows my mind how just this has happened. And it worries me. Final thoughts from you, Christopher, like, will justice ever be served for Halyna, or do you think the family got their money? They seem to be making the film. And then two, like, do you think this will actually stop this from happening in the future? What do we do moving forward, Christopher?
No, it's really horrible when you look at other fatalities in the same situation. Brandon Lee, they didn't learn from that, and we're not going to learn from this. And as the industry. And the reason why is you have Alec Baldwin coming out there saying, I did nothing wrong. Well, how is that possible that he did nothing wrong and you have somebody who's deceased? Obviously, something was done horribly wrong. And for him just to saying like, well, it's just some kind of weird thing, just spontaneously went off. So how would anyone learn from that? And the only way people learn is being held accountable and made an example out of. And so they're saying like, well, gee, I don't want that to happen to me. Now, I think among the armorers, hopefully, they would say, and I think they were a very, very careful and professional bunch to begin with, that this is knowing it's like anyone touching that firearm is going to be potentially prosecuted if something goes on. And the armorers, like I say, they get it. They understand the rules. But what happened is that corners were cut and they figure, I'm going to hire somebody who's never been in this role before. I'm going to give her the title armorer, even though she didn't have the qualifications. That hasn't stopped. And what they need to do is, on an industry level, have requirements for an armor, and that, sorry, I'm going on long on this, but that was in talking to a fellow, another armorer, in another interview that we did. He said there are no requirements legally or in the industry to be an armor. Like literally, you or I could be an armor on a film. And so that needs to change, so that low budget producers can't hire somebody off the street, give them the title of armor, and then say, hey, we didn't do anything wrong. You know, the actor Alec didn't do anything wrong. We had an armorer. We were all relying on the armorer. And that's exactly what happened. And it's not going to change because they haven't instituted any change.
Yeah, I don't want to call them out specifically, but there's a few people in my comments who I'm just getting really annoyed at, or just trying to make this discussion is asinine. It's the armor and the prop master's fault. Actors do this with the guns all the time on set. They don't check because it's not their job to do so. Oh my God, that thought process is asinine. It's not the first AD's job to go hand it. And that's who did it, guys. You're like so hung up. I don't know why, but it really bothers me. Get better informed. Sure, we said all of them are instructed, but are responsible. But what so pisses me off is it wasn't the armorer who gave it to Alec. Like if that happened, I might be like, all right, he's there to trust the armorer, and you guys can make that stupid argument. I wouldn't agree with it, but the armorer didn't hand it to him. The first AD did, and I am sorry, my brother is a professional AD. I know a lot of ADs in this industry. The first thing he said is, I would have never held that weapon. I'd have never held it, let alone handed it to an actor. That's not my job. And that's what happened. And so for Alec, who's not only just the actor, he's a producer, to allow the first AD to be in charge of the weapons and then to trust the first AD to be charged of the weapons, you guys are asinine. You're not listening. That's not safe. That's not what the safety protocols are on a set. And you sound like idiots, and you're allowing this to keep happening because actors can just play dumb and be like, well, I just do what I'm told. No, if we learn anything from this, every actor should say, no, open it in front of me. Show me if there's any rounds in them. That's what the protocol should be. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, that's it. And it takes seconds. And no one is expecting, and I agree with the sentiment that, look, actors are not experts on firearms. That takes a long time to understand how to use a firearm and safely and unload it and check it. That's not something an actor would know ordinarily. But that the safety bulletin doesn't say that the actor has to do it. It says that the firearm has to be demonstrated to the actor that it is unloaded, including the rounds that are being used visually and physically, before the actor takes possession of it. And so, again, that takes seconds. And Alec's responsibility here is that he accepted a real firearm that turned out to be loaded without anyone showing him that it was unloaded. And it would, again, taking seconds. And again, this is not a Nerf gun. This is a real firearm that we're talking about. So that's where I part company with people saying, well, it's nothing. Like, why would you accept a real firearm from somebody without either checking it yourself or making the other person check it, showing it to you that if they know how to do it? That's where the criminal negligence occurred. And again, it's like we can debate that all day long. Halyna is gone. She's deceased. So obviously something got totally screwed up. And the question is not as much as what happened here, is how are we going to keep somebody else from suffering the same fate, just like Brandon Lee did? How many people have to go through this before somebody says, hey, we're just actually put some rules in place so it doesn't occur again?
Yeah, it bothers me. Kim, I want to get your thoughts. I saw your hand up. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think I understand the argument that it's like the fault shouldn't be completely on Alec. And I agree with that, because I feel like this was a combination of a lot of negligence, in my opinion, because you can't just look at Alec as the actor that held the gun. He is a producer on this film. They created this environment. And like Christopher was saying, the situation with the armorer is messy, and the producers are partially to blame for the decisions that are made when it comes to that. So it's everybody involved, and it is also just the number one rule is you check your gun. That's it. So I don't believe that Alex should like go to prison for the rest of his life, and we should
Agreed.
You know, witch hunt him till the end of time. But it's just I'm not seeing accountability, and I'm also not seeing action within the industry to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Yep.
And I don't like that because it's enough is enough.
And I want to comment. Arlie says, Andy, thank you for the 10. Can't we? This was a terrible accident. Alec was told that it was cold. He relied on that professional information. I feel bad for all involved, but this was an accident, nothing more. We've never said it wasn't an accident. Doesn't mean you're not responsible for accidents. Right? Yeah. Correct, Christopher? There are charges when it's involuntary manslaughter can be an accident, correct?
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, that's so under New Mexico law, the statute that they had charged him with, it says that if you're engaged in a lawful activity, which is making a movie, that could result in death, meaning pointing a real firearm at somebody, that you have to use due circumspection, which is just, ordinary care. And if you fail to use that care, then you are criminally responsible for the death of this person. So again, we're not, this is somebody died.
A mother.
And so that's why this is serious stuff. And again, it's not as if it were a Nerf gun and then it turned out that somebody modified it without Alec's knowledge to make it fire like, a real bullet. This is an actual firearm. And so that's where, like I say, is just, it is a deadly weapon and you have to treat it with that respect. And when you don't, then accidents like this happen and people die. But yeah, I think Kim said it very well. And it's just like, hey, accidents happen, got to learn from them so they don't happen again. What have we learned from this? Well, according to Alec, there's nothing went wrong. Everything was totally fine. And that just can't be true.
Yeah, that's not what happened. And I hope an investigation is done. We'll see. And will Hannah, you think, get charged at the end of the day? Because they're saying they're leaving it open. I guess you'd said it. You think it's unlikely that we're really going to see anything out of this?
Yeah, I think she's a sacrificial lamb. I mean, she definitely bears responsibility. She was pulled in many different directions on that film because it was low budget. I think ideally, she should have stood up and said, look, producer, I'm not doing this. This is not safe. I quit. But, there's pressure, I'm sure, and to do the job. And because she wanted to be an armor, her dad was an armor. So she wanted to have this career. And so she was pushed into doing things that were unsafe. And her crime is to have not stood up and said no to it. And she was, I think, just completely unsafe on that set. So she bears responsibility. And I think ultimately the reason why you are seeing one case dismissed and the other case pursued is one person has lots of money. You can hire the best lawyers in the world. And the other one is just, a lady in their early 20s without a lot of money.
Well said. Well, there you go. We've covered it. That's it. I'm frustrated just because I don't want this to happen. Start using CGI firearms. They're all practically doing anyway. There's really no reason for this. It's just such a tragedy that could have been prevented had he just checked it and not just trusted the people. And everyone making this excuse, it does piss me off because it's like, no, don't just trust what somebody tells you when you're holding a real weapon. That's not what your safety training has taught you. Look, eyes on it. That's what happens on actual sets. Accident, maybe, but human error, it was. So was that an accident? That's really the issue here. And for him to be able to get away with this is frustrating. Christopher, I appreciate you coming in. Make sure you guys support him over on Twitter at @CA_divorce. Always a pleasure to have you, sir. Any final thoughts you want to add?
No, thanks, Andy and Kim. It's and everyone else. Good to let me pop in. I'm in Las Vegas for a conference, and then I'll be back next week.
Ooh, well, I'll be. It looks like we'll be crossing paths. I'll be there next week as well. Enjoy your time, and I hope to see you soon.
All right, see ya.
Thank you, sir, and thank you guys for watching. If you're watching live, don't go anywhere. We're not done, but if you're watching on the replay, we are going to clip it right here. Hit that join button, will you? That's the subscribe button. Hit the bell for alerts, but also hit that join button, pick a tier, become a member, and then you can watch the whole show at your leisure. Also, hit that subscribe for It's Kim and support her and her awesome new videos that are coming out. We appreciate you guys. If you're watching live, we got so much more to talk about. In fact, let's get started.